Hello, everyone. Welcome to Console Room Year 11. We hope you're having a great time at the convention, whether you're joining us virtually or you're actually on site. We'd like to welcome you to our Lost and Missing Episodes panel. Um, I think we'll start by going around and introducing ourselves. My name is Gordon Dymowski. I am the lead organizer of Chicago Doctor Who Meetup, and I am also a writer and contributor to Outside In Regenerates.
Hi, I'm Rob Levy. I am a fan. I am a writer and a blogger and a broadcaster. I also have contributed to Outside In Regenerates, as well as a couple different books for Cosmic Press on the companions of Doctor Who and a couple different anthologies as well.
I'm Reuben Herfindahl, and yes, I have also contributed to Outside and Regenerates. Looks like we got three of us here. So um, I'm a fan, and I own a game store in River Falls, Wisconsin called Midwest Jedi.
Okay, cool. So why don't we begin by setting the stage? Because I'm sure someone who is not who comes across on YouTube is wondering, what's this? What do you mean lost and missing episodes? So Rob, can you start us by giving us a little bit of context?
Oh, gee, thanks. So basically, there are some episodes of classic Doctor Who that are missing. The ones from the Pertwee era that were wiped have been recovered. So we are intact from the John Pertwee era through the end of Sylvester McCoy. The Hartnell era and the Troughton era, however, have several missing episodes. And this is because the BBC, in an effort to save tape and space, and because they were knuckleheads, wiped a lot of television shows, not just Doctor Who, but other programs as well. So because of that, we have the phrase missing, presumed wiped phrase, which basically means episodes of classic Doctor Who have been wiped and are gone forever. Now, where this gets tricky is that Doctor Who was distributed throughout radio station or TV stations throughout the old Commonwealth, right? So episodes have turned up in Hong Kong, they've turned up in Africa or the Middle East, or there's lots of these different outposts that have old radio stations with stacks of film lying about somewhere that we're trying to get to. Most of them are in countries we do not want to visit or can't get to, right? So we don't know what's there. Some of them are also in the hands of private collectors, allegedly, and some of them are just gone. So, for example, every couple of years, they find an episode or two when they're rooting through an old TV station or somebody clears out a closet of a collector and they're like, I have this, what is it? So sometimes we get footage, sometimes we get an episode. A couple of years ago, they found a really great interview with William Hartnell that was from after he left the role and he was doing a play, and they found this video thing of him talking about that. So there's all kinds of nuggets that they find. But when we're talking about missing episodes, we are talking about episodes of Doctor Who that are gone. For example, Dalek Master Plan, the Celestial Toymaker, the Highlanders. There's an episode of Web of Fear that is missing. The Invasion. There's lots of great classic Doctor Who stories that are missing parts of or all of their stories. That is the long and short of it. I hope that makes sense. Guys, jump in and fill in any holes I missed.
Okay,
Yeah, I think. Oh, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
No, I think that's a good summary of it. Uh, Long story short is we're missing some episodes.
Mhm. Yeah, but in the interim, there have been ways to enjoy Doctor Who, even though there have been missing episodes. A lot of fans in the early to mid '60s recorded them on audio tape, and so the BBC has a policy similar to their policy about missing episodes, where it's kind of a if you have a missing episode, you can send it back to them, no questions asked. With audio, they collect it from fans, and they have a complete run of audios for the Hartnell and Troughton years. One way those have been used have been telesnaps. There is a which integrates soundtracks with, I believe the gentleman's name is John Cura, who took
Yep.
pictures of certain episodes as they were happening. And so they've been involved in telesnap reconstructions. Um, there are many people online, loose cannons in the 90s, I think, late 80s, early 90s, did telesnap reconstructions and expanded it to episodes that we don't have pictures for, like the Myth Makers. If you go on YouTube, you can find a lot of great amateur and fan animated reconstructions of episodes. Another way is that the BBC would release the soundtracks, but with linking narration by actors from that particular episode. So you'd be able to listen to it like an audiobook. But more recently, the soundtracks have been used to generate animated reconstructions. It started in 2016 with Power of the Daleks, and we've seen several Troughton and at least one Hartnell story released that's in animated form, both in black and white and color. And I guess what I'd like to do is, in terms of talking about missing or missing and lost episodes, what are for my fellow panelists, what are your thoughts about the animated reconstructions?
I'm personally more a fan of the telesnaps. It's more true to the original format. I'm kind of preferential with that, but I also realize I am a Doctor Who fan that's pushing 50, so I'm part of that generation that doesn't mind black and white and those kind of things. I think as far as a way to introduce new fans to missing episodes, I think it's great. They grew up with anime and manga and all this kind of stuff, so it's an easier gateway for them to get into it. It's not as boring. So I think what they're doing is great. The animation styles vary wildly. I think there's some that are better than others. But yeah, my personal preferred way to watch it is telesnaps, and Loose Cannon has done some amazing work on that. It's easy to find on YouTube, and it doesn't cost anything. But yeah, the animated things are the way forward for the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm fine with both. I'm so used to the telesnaps that having the animation's kind of jarring now, but I am hit and miss with the animation. One of the things that bugs me about the animation is that sometimes the illustrators get really cute with it. Like I think it's Evil of the Daleks, maybe, that they put like a wanted poster of the Master in it and a weeping angel and thing. It's like, don't play around with that. Just do it as close as you can, right? But something like Galaxy 4, for example, I enjoyed the animation in that, and I thought that really made for a good story. And I understand why they do it, much like Reuben said. But I also think that it's a way for them to market and sell these as full DVD sets, because people will want something tangible and physical. Whereas the telesnaps, I think you really have to be like a hardcore Doctor Who nerd to really love.
Mm-hmm. Well, speaking as a hardcore Doctor Who nerd who is of a certain age, probably close in age to the both of you gentlemen, I'm going to say something that's going to get me flamed. I actually prefer the animations to the telesnaps.
No, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I think. Well, I wasn't talking about you flaming me. I think the people in the comments below on YouTube are going to flame me, because I think telesnaps are a great historical record of what the episode is, but trying to watch them, depending on the story, at least for me, has been tough. Like I love the Macro Terror telesnap, which it goes along for me, it's very brisk. It highlights the story long before it's animated. But others like Evil of the Daleks, and this is not a reflection of the people doing the telesnaps, this is a reflection of my taste. It involves different parts of my brain where it's like you have to figure out, okay, how are people moving? You have to look at the crawl when it describes action. But I do think a lot of both the animation telesnaps highlight the need for and why it's important that these episodes be found. Because for a lot of people, having that original text is very important. So and this is a question that Doctor Who fans always ask. How likely do you think it is that we'll find more missing episodes?
Hmm.
I think I think the odds are we're going to get a few back. The research that's been done into the distribution of this, and this is getting a little deep in the weeds, but you know, with the help of some really dedicated fans doing the research, we know where most of these episodes were distributed, when they were distributed, um, what they call bicycling routes, which was, they go to Hong Kong, they go to Nigeria, etc. We know most of the routes where these have taken and where they're likely to have been at some point. So all the deep research that needs to be done has really been done on this, and we know for the most part what actually got shipped back to the UK to be junked and was junked. So there's bound to be some more stuff out there that, was shipped back to the UK to be junked and somebody basically stole it. I mean, that's how we have a lot of these episodes, and that's why there's an amnesty. So I think the odds that another couple would turn up are pretty good. Are we going to get everything? No, that's impossible. But I think the odds that there's going to be one or two more, and we do know from various interviews Paul Vanez has done that there are at least two in the hands of private collectors that we hopefully would get back someday. I mean, they're aging out at some point, so hopefully there's at least two or three out there.
Yeah, I think the hope for us all is that this is in the hands of private collectors, and as it happens, things will happen. There was a collector in Australia, I think, that recently passed, who had like basically a small hangar's worth of just all kinds of stuff, and they were still, as of the time we recorded this, going through it. Right? We don't know if he had any Doctor Who or not, but there's massive collections of people, and sometimes the collectors may not even know they have it, which is fair because they're just so. They'll find this stuff at an estate sale or something, they just grab it, and they may not have gotten to it yet or cataloged it in a way that we can find it. And there's also hope that there's places, they haven't really had access to, like Iran or parts of the Sudan or places like this, that may have some of it. I think those hopes dash the longer we go through time because of preservation of film. But I think our best hope right now is private collectors.
Yeah, I'm very hopeful that we'll get quite a few more back, simply because even though with a lot of that film, as Rob kind of alluded to, they go through a process. If you don't store film correctly, especially black and white film, it goes through a process called vinegarization, which is precisely what you think it is. It disintegrates in the vinegar. So I do think that there are, first, I think there are private collectors who have a lot more that they don't realize, and they will probably get those back. I'm also hopeful because there will be someone who comes along, and it happened back in 2013 with Web of Fear and Enemy of the World, where somebody declares we will never ever find any more Doctor Who episodes, and guess what happens? They're found. And and I don't think any of us saying, "Oh, there's not going to be any more to be found," it's not going to work. But in terms of kind of what we're looking for, if we had a wish list for what single episode story, even, and you can have more than one answer, that you wish someone would find, what would be on your wish list?
Personally, I'd like the Savages. There's not, there's not really images from it other than a very few short clips. It's not a well-known story. It's Stephen's final story, and watching the telesnaps and listening to the audio. Sounds like it's a really good one, and I think we could really benefit by seeing the footage from it. And there's not a single episode that exists at all. So, it was also during the time where, there were no telesnaps commissioned for that. So I think that one would be a lot of fun.
My easiest answer would be any of them. I mean, we'd always had heard things about Enemy of the World and how it wasn't really that great of an episode, or it wasn't outstanding. And then we got it and we're like, wow, this is amazing. Right. So I think whatever one we get is going to offer us surprises. I love your idea of the Savages. That's fantastic. I'd like to see the Highlanders just because I think that it'd be nice to have like a really great historical story that's not animated. I'd love to have the rest of the Invasion just because I think that is a cohesive full story would be great. And I think the thing that everybody wants is Dalek Master Plan. I think that's sort of the crown jewel of everything. But that would be also great. And yeah, I'm gonna go with that. I think that's a pretty good list.
Yeah, I would probably, I'll steal Rob's answer of all of them, but if I had to be selective about it, I would probably I'd choose. There's two selections on my list, which would be 10th Planet Episode 4, because just to be a completist about it. But my personal choice for a story would be The Massacre, because it would be it's a historical that hasn't been animated. I'm not sure if it would ever be animated because it's very serious. It's a very dramatic story. But and I'd also like to see the Myth Makers, because I've heard it on in audio and I like it, but I'd love to see visuals, and it's also one I wouldn't mind seeing animated. And let me turn the question back to both of you of if there is a missing story that you would like to see animated, um, which one would you want to see animated?
I want to do over on Celestial Toymaker because I hate the animation on it. The thing is, like, as much as I love the Highlanders, that thing is going to be a nightmare to animate because of all the different colors and the plaids and things. So I don't think that's likely to be in the cards. Plus, I think if they approach something like the Highlanders, they'll look at the Reign of Terror and go like, well, that didn't really sell, right? Which also is kind of a bummer. Maybe I'm weird, and then I wonder if Space Pirates is better than people say it is, or if it's really as bad as people say it is. So I'm going to go with that one. And man, almost any of the Hartnells. I mean, there's just so many Hartnell ones that are kind of interesting. Yeah, Massacre would be good. So would the Savages. So both of those, I think, as well, and maybe Wheel in Space, a proper good animation for that.
If we're being hypothetical and thinking Disney money, Marco Polo, I think, would be a good one, because we do have enough information about it with all Waris Hussein's notes and everything on it. And I think we know how it would have been filmed and shot. It'd be gorgeous. It'd be a nightmare to animate, but if they had the money to do it, that'd be my choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if I had to choose one story to animate, and this is going to be the obvious one, Dalek Master Plan, because I think you could really go all out with a budget and with animation style. I mean, it would be a lot to animate because you're talking about essentially 6 hours worth of content. But I think that would be a story that'd be worth. I think it's one that kind of says, because it's missing, you could really do a huge, great, grand, awesome looking story.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's maybe shift gears, because we've talked about missing episodes in animation. And I don't think I've asked this question yet, so if I have, please forgive me. You know, old age, got the hairline to prove it. Of the missing episode animations, are there any that really strike out as being good, or the ones that have been released? So Celestial Toymaker is not out on the stores, and Rob, I'm probably not going to buy it either because I agree with you on the art on the art. But of the ones that have been released, which ones have been the most striking to you, whether it's in terms of style or just you watched a story and you realized, oh yeah, I get it now?
Uh, hmm. The thing is, as I said, Galaxy 4 was really good. Um, I don't dislike Power of the Daleks as much as some folks do. But I thought both Fury from the Deep and Underwater Menace were okay. Um, some of the early ones that they plotted around with, just weren't necessarily great. Like Reign of Terror is a little sloppy in places. It's also not the biggest, perkiest, peppiest story as well. Abominable Snowman is certainly better. Um, but yeah, I'd probably go with Abominable Snowman or maybe Galaxy 4.
Yeah, I'd echo part of that. I think it was an early one, but I think the Invasion was actually
Yeah,
quite well done. I'm a little bit of a purist, so uh, uh, the Macro Terror where they cut out a scene or two.
yeah, that
Uh,
drove me nuts.
yeah, but I don't. Abominable Snowman, they took some liberties too with it, but I think
Yeah.
those were positive ones. I don't think that was better cultural representation issues rather than cutting out a scene because it costs too much money to animate it. So, yeah, I still think Invasion sets a very high bar.
Yeah, I would say that for me on the full reconstruction in terms of no existing episodes, for me, my personal highlight is Abominable Snowman, because it's one of those stories that when I listened to it as an audio, I thought it went one way, but seeing it animated and seeing how things played out, I'm not sure whether they used the original camera scripts or just redirected it from scratch, but it's like, okay, it's one of those where I went from it's kind of okay to okay, I get it now. I'm actually one of the few people who liked Power of the Daleks because I was always curious about Troughton's debut, more as a how his doctor was presented, because
Mhm.
we have very um, minimal information about very minimal film of him as his original incarnation. I also like the Macro Terror. Even though they took out a scene or two, I think the overall story isn't really affected. There's nothing that I think it was cut more because it was trying to figure out, okay, we don't want to animate a full head of hair and then have her have a haircut. So it's just a way to go from one to the other. Um, and I think, but I think in terms of the DVD releases, um, I think that the Invasion definitely, and I would say as a second, and I know this is going to be maybe a bit controversial, is the Ice Warriors, because I like that kind of Hanna-Barbera-esque um, style. The ones I really didn't like, were the ones I think it's Element 55. So it was like not just the Reign of Terror, but the 10th Planet, um, the moon and the moon base. I think they did an okay job, but that personal visual style is just not something that it's not my cup of tea. They're not bad. It's just I can I can I can deal with the visuals to get through the story. I mean, are there any ones that strike you as being like, what were they thinking, or that just didn't really appeal to you from a style standpoint rather than a story standpoint?
Uh, you know, um, I have to say early on when they decided what they were going to animate, it was kind of interesting. Like you had this huge canon of things to animate, and you picked Reign of Terror, right? Which I wouldn't have done as early. I mean, but I also understand that it's a historical and they wanted to do it. It would have been nicer to see that kind of go to the back of the line, and maybe that money go towards, something else. I don't know. I think with things like Moonbase, for example, a really good animation for that um, might help. I think that's kind of an example. Like I'd like a really decent animation for that. And yeah, I'm not really there. The ones that I dislike, you know, I'm not super upset with. I mean, there's aspects of the scenes being taken out, and just the way that they added little things here and there. That's more of my grievances with these than the animation.
Yeah, I mean, it's like for me, and I don't want to get too much into the kind of uh, trashing, but like when I'm watching some of the newer ones, like Faceless Ones, Evil, um, and I see references to like Magpie Electronics, where it feels like it's um, and I'm kind of, and again, because I'm kind of older and not in that generation, I kind of hate the little like here's a reference, here's a reference. You don't having like a poster of say, having a poster of say like John Smith and the Common Men live kind of makes sense. And I understand why they're doing it to give a sense of a lived world, but I think in the animation, um, you're not necessarily watching for little background Easter eggs. You're looking for the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, but speaking of the animations, it's um, uh, and missing episodes. I think and I kind of want to see if we can have some of a conversation about this. Um, with classic Doctor Who now being on Tubi, um, I find it interesting that I know I don't know if BritBox has the full animated reconstructions on yet. I know they had at least one of the partially reconstructed, which is the Invasion. Um, but when you look at Tubi, they have the full animated versions of like Abominable Snowmen, Evil the Daleks, Galaxy 4, but there aren't any of the partially animated ones. Does either of you know what the rationale would be?
I don't know. I don't think I'm not even sure it's on BritBox anymore. I think it's gone because I think they're all on Tubi. Um, but I think part of it is that it's got to be a rights issue versus the animation versus the full episodes. It might go into rights. It could even go into SAG-AFTRA stuff. I don't know. Um, it might also be too that, like some television executives think that people might be confused and they may not want to watch it. I think it's a simple case of like them just again dumbing down. One of the things the animations have taught us when they were on BBC America, for example, is that they did not understand the audience at all that they were presenting these for.
Mhm.
So the way they screened them and stuff was, just all kind of haphazard. So I don't really think that the people that program and market this for networks or streaming completely understand the fandom, whereas I think the home video market, people really get, this is what fans want, this is what fans like, and things like that. So I think that's part of it. But I just think that it would actually really confuse some people because, you get 2 episodes in color and 2 in black and white or, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was. I know with the Invasion, and I just did a quick Google check. There is a page for classic Doctor Who on BrickBox, so
Okay.
I don't know. So I don't know. And it may just be that BBC Studios, which is used to be BBC Worldwide, it may be that they've decided, okay, it's a package that they're going to sell. But like the Invasion, I know was on BritBox because Cosgrove
Oh,
Hall
good.
that did the animation went out of business and closed. So I could assume that BBC said, okay, since you're no longer an entity, that's our content. And with the full animation, because that's done with the BBC didn't farm out because of not only is it their content, but I'm sure it was kind of more of a way to kind of they say, okay, we take ownership, you just provide the animation services. That makes sense. But with the partial ones, like Rob said, it could be a rights issue, or it could be something, or it could be something else. Reuben, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I think you're on the same page. I mean, it's like anything, there's rights issues, and the Dominators was on BritBox for a while, and then it fell off, and it came back on. I'm sure there's contracts that get negotiated all the time. It's why we don't have The Unearthly Child on iPlayer, but we have it on BritBox. So there's complicated legal stuff.
Yeah. And it's also the state of Doctor Who, just to go a little bit off tangent, is um when we talk about lost and missing episodes, I mean, it also happens in the context of, at least in the States, you have three different streaming services with three different versions of Doctor Who. Because you've got Tubi, BritBox, and Pluto TV somewhat with Classic Who. Oh, you also have Retro TV, which is a broadcast, it's a digital channel. And it's kind of one of those, if you tune in your antenna really carefully, you can get it. In with everything from Eccleston to Whitaker, you have HBO Max. And then with everything new on, you have with the Shooty, season 14, specials Shooty on, you've got it on Disney. And I guess and I can open up for discussion, but it just seems like I wonder how much of a priority finding lost and missing episodes is for the BBC, given that it seems like I know in England you can get everything under the same umbrella, but throughout the rest of the world
Yeah.
it's scattered. Um,
I think that, there is, if you're the BBC and you find missing episodes, I think finding any missing content is great, because I know the BBC loves positive PR. And they also are very big on nostalgia. So like when they find old Dudley Moore, Peter Cook stuff, or if they find old episodes of Monty Python or things like that, they usually make a big deal about it. But I also think that they like the idea of being able to have the coverage of it, right? Because if they find an old episode from the Hartnell era, they can mention, oh, Doctor Who is on BBC, blah, 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 Saturdays or Mondays or whatever, right? And then they also can build events around it, right? They have all these great screenings at BFI when they do either animations or restorations or whatever. They find a missing episode, they'll screen them and have live guests, and people show up for those like crazy. So I think it's a no-brainer for the BBC in terms of like, it fills out their collection, it atones for past mistakes, it feeds into their current marketing machine, and it also is kind of a legacy thing for them, right? I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah, and we have, just to take a little step back here, part of the reason a lot of these episodes are missing, we aren't missing episodes of Perry Mason or Star Trek in the US, is because it was a rights issue. You could air a repeat in the UK up to 3 times within, I think it was a 5 or 10 year period, but you still had to pay the actors for it. But after that, it was scrap. Whereas we had different legal stuff in the US, so we had syndication where we could watch Star Trek on endless loop. And if you're in the UK, you didn't get to go through what we did in the PBS era, where we would have Doctor Who on once a day or once a week on loop, and they would have a repeat twice, 3 times over multiple decades. So I had a point with that, but I lost it. Sorry.
I think, part of what you're saying is because they had a finite time to show it after that, they have it 3 to 5 years. After that 5 years is up, like, well, we don't need to save this anymore. We can throw it out. Kind of.
Right. And they've gotten, I think where they've gotten better than we have nowadays is, BFI does their missing believed wipe stuff. Kaleidoscope does a lot of stuff, uh, where they'll be excited about recovering a little bit of news footage from the 1990s and preserving that. We've lost it over here too, but there's no centralized repository to put that kind of stuff, So that's where we're getting excited about having continuity trailers on the DVDs and the Blu-rays that somebody recovered off a videotape that they recorded off air at some point. So there's more stuff that kind of stuff getting recovered
Yeah.
on a regular basis.
Yeah, I think I'm probably like you, Reuben, and like if they found an old TV appearance by like an actor from the show that was a regular or something, I would still watch that. If they find a clip of, Jackie Lane doing some interview with somebody, I would watch that, right? Or if they find like if it's 40 seconds of like set footage and you just see what the costumes and the sets look like, but it's from, the Savages, I'd be like, oh, I would watch that too. I think that the fans of the show are just so hungry to have anything we can get. And I think that we are really into the nuances of the show. We're into the scripts, we're into the costumes, we're into like what did the sets look like? The whole idea of how the production was done, I think, is much more of interest to the fans than it is maybe other fandoms.
Yeah, and I think because we don't have everything in one piece is what makes Doctor Who special. I mean, with Star Trek, we have a whole streaming service that probably gets 90% of its income from Star Trek. A show like Dark Shadows, which is a soap opera that was on for 5 years. Um, when you consider that there's only one missing episode out of 1,245, that's very impressive. And that episode is a telesnap version. But I think like with Who, like I remember two big things about in my younger Who days that were about uh episodes being discovered. One was Tomb of the Cybermen,
Yes.
because that was one of the first. I remember spending my last $20 for that VHS because I had to have it. And the discovery in New Zealand of sensor clips, where in New Zealand they would cut out pieces of film before they could show something on TV. And there's a fan who went to the office and said, "Hey, do you have these clips?" "Oh, sure, here you go." And so, to Rob's point, it's about appreciating the nuance. It's about that it's not just about, okay, yeah, you have a good time, you hear a great story. It's about how it's written. The fact that when you watch Doctor Who in certain years, you see the history of television production. You also get a sense of, you're dealing with studio bound, maybe up to 5 speaking roles, possibly more, 3 cameras, big, bulky black and white cameras. Um, uh, uh, Basically not much of a budget, maybe the amount of like an episode of a soap opera. Um, and I think that's part of why I think a lot of fans, both young and old, are really into and they're passionate about finding lost episodes because it's not just about finding the history, it's about the greater context. And here in Chicago, I think it's the Chicago Historical Museum is featuring 5 newly digitized episodes of Kukla, Fran, and Ollie.
Ooh.
I can't, yeah, and although it's great from a historical perspective, I don't think anyone's going to come and watch and go, "Oh yes, this is 70-year-old television. This is great and exciting, and I'm enjoying it." But I think with Doctor Who, because of the nature of the show, it really does feel like there's something missing, but that's why we treasure it all the more. Okay, well, I think we've got about 10 more minutes to go. So why don't we why don't we start with ending why don't we end the panel with um for those of you who are watching on YouTube or who are joining us from the convention on site, um if you if you have let's say the two best ways to enjoy lost episodes, um what would your recommendation be? Like for me, I grew up, I love the audiobook versions from BBC Books, which are a little bit hard to find, but you can find them. I think there's some available in Audible and collection form. Like to me, the great thing is you don't have to worry, I don't have to worry about special effects because they're all in my head. Like there's an infinite budget, you know. If I want to imagine, like with Fury from the Deep, you know, as much as I love the animation, I love the audiobook more because it plays so well as an audio. And the other one is I would suggest just looking up Loose Cannon's telesnaps on YouTube because I think those are, even though the animated episodes are great, I think there's not, you know, we don't know when certain episodes are going to be animated. And I think watching the telesnaps on YouTube give you a better sense of what the story would actually look like. And also kind of it's a good training for developing like that ability to, you know, think of it as like a PowerPoint presentation, but with Doctor Who. So, um, what would you, Rob, Reuben, what would your recommendations be?
So I am fortunate in that there are several libraries in St. Louis that have those audios, the CD collected audios. Like I think they have Dalek Master Plan, and I think a couple of the others that you can check out. So I would urge you to check out your local library just to see if they have any. Some will do what's called an interlibrary loan, where you can get those. Um, because one of the things that happened sort of in the early 2000s and early 2010s is that a lot of libraries were starting to get the audio Doctor Who content that was made available because people were interested in it. So they still have it in collections. So I would look around for that. I also would check out the BBC sounds or just the BBC, app, because every once in a while they will put those up. I know we just had the 60th anniversary, so some of those have been put up on streaming through the BBC app worldwide. That you don't, it's not locked out. Um, and I like the audios. Like you said, the theater of the mind is the best way to go, right? I do also like the telesnaps because it's a great way to sort of see it as it was intended to be seen. Although I do understand that that's not for everybody, right? So I think my first preference is audio for the missing episodes, and then the other one is if it's a really well done animation or animation live action combo.
Yeah, I'll echo that. And just to take a minute to appreciate how lucky we are that we have everything on audio. Um, the first audio recorded was actually Marco Polo, which is our first missing episode. And in later years, I mean, the level of innovation that went into recording this, I used to record stuff before the days of VCRs by putting a tape player close to the TV in the 80s. In the 1960s, there were people hardwiring into the back of their TV the audio output to go into the tape player, which was a potentially lethal thing if you touched the CRT in the wrong way. So there's an amazing amount of luck here and skill that we have these audios in such good quality, and that they've been cleaned up so well by Mark Ayers. I remember, in the late 80s, early 90s, when the cassette tapes would circulate, they were fifth, sixth generation, you could barely understand them. And they're such good quality now. So I would echo that the audio is my favorite. And I'd also say that I grew up with the Target books as a way to,
Yes.
realize what a missing episode was. And there's some that take a few liberties, the Mythmakers being an obvious one, but a lot of those, follow the scripts very carefully, and it's a good way to just get to know these episodes. And every single episode that's missing and anything from Classic Who is available in Target books. Even if they're out of print, they are all available on in ebook format. You can just pick up on Kindle, on Amazon, whatever. So those would be my big two, and then obviously the Shell Snaps and the animations if they catch your fancy.
Mhm. Yeah, and several of the Target novelizations have been turned into audiobook form.
Yes.
And to kind of parallel Rob's recommendation for the library, some library systems, including Chicago's, allow you to check out ebooks and audiobooks. So you don't have to worry about, um, you know, you don't have to worry about, say, interlibrary loan or having to go to the library to pick up CDs. You can actually, once they're available and they use a separate app, you download it to your device, you use your device, and then when you need to return the book, you need to return it, it automatically gets returned. Um, so we're coming to a close. So, I'd like to ask my fellow panelists, any final thoughts before we end?
I think, if you are one of two things, if you are a fan of the new series, it's discovering the classic series. Don't dismiss watching a classic series episode that is animated or half and half, or even one that's not available but only available in telesnaps. Don't dismiss those. Take the plunge, right? Um, Also, if you are a Classic Who fan, maybe you watched the telesnaps and you sort of said, "Oh, I'm done. I don't need to watch the animation. Take a chance," right? Um, but I would journey through all of these. Reuben brought up a great point with the Target books. Those are just fantastic. 99% of them are really good. Um, and a lot of the times the actual writers of the stories did them, and they were able to put some of the ideas and things that they wanted done. Also, the ones that Ian Marta wrote were fantastic. He's really good for somebody being not involved with an actual production of a show that wrote the books. So I would, sort of attack it at all fronts, but jump in and relish this like missing episode history. Don't let it be the thing that like stilts your interest in the show. And this is a really fascinating um, history of the program, right? I love talking about the missing episodes and just like trying to figure out like Reuben said, the tracking of it. Like, okay, this episode was in Egypt in 1962, but where is it gone? Or 1972 rather. Where is it gone? I love that kind of stuff. So support it too. If they put out an animated DVD, says the guy who's not going to buy Toymaker, support it. I'll tell my friends to buy it, but like, for example, I don't like the animation of Celestial Toymaker. I will find the audio and just cherish it, or the telesnap and cherish it. So if you don't like the particular animation, you've still got these two other options to watch it. But support it as well. Support it with your money, support it with your social media posts, tell your friends that are Who fans, because we're only going to get more of this stuff if we support it.
Yeah, I guess my thing is if you have an interest in this topic, there's a number of really good resources out there. I would definitely recommend the Missing Episode podcast. It's amazing. It's extremely deep dives into that stuff, and they have actually fired off an event or two with film collectors that have been able to recover some film content, even going back to some films from 1917 or something like that, just by talking to that. So they have a really good in-depth podcast that if you like deep geeking, it's worth doing it. The classic book on the series by Richard Molesworth is called Wiped. It's worth every penny. It covers the bicycling routes and everything. And then the final one I would recommend is Richard Bignell's Nothing at the End of the Lane magazine, which you can get on PDFs and stuff like that. It's a really deep dive into the topic, and you can go into a really deep rabbit hole on this, or you can just skim the surface. But it's a fascinating topic, and it's probably the most well-researched missing of anything in the history of television and movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'll end by saying that it's once upon a time when I was growing up as a young Who fan back in the 1980s, for the younger ones out there, it's the time where Stranger Things is taking place. I dreamt that I would one day watch Tomb of the Cybermen, Web of Fear, and Evil of the Daleks, despite the fact that at the time they were all missing and we had a lot more missing. Um, the fact that now I'm able to enjoy Tomb of the Cybermen, Evil of the Daleks, and Web of Fear is revelatory because it shows the power of persistence. And the reason why this is important is that we all love Doctor Who. And I think being able to find these buried treasures, every new episode we find is a gift. 10 years ago, people were saying, there were a lot of experts saying there are no more missing episodes found. And literally within 1 month of the 50th anniversary, we had Web of Fear, an enemy of the world. And I think lost and missing episodes, even though it's tragic why they're missing, I think we're living at a time where we can enjoy them. So get the audios. If there's an animation that you're not going to buy, seek out the missing episode that has the audio. So and listen to that, because you may not like the animation style of Celestial Toymaker, but at least you're enjoying a story. And the great thing about audio is that your imagination does all the heavy lifting. So I'd like to thank my fellow panelists, Rob and Reuben. My name has been Gordon. I want to thank all of you for attending. This has been the Lost and Missing Episodes panel for Console Room, Year 11. Please feel free to leave comments, continue the conversation, and enjoy the rest of the convention. Thank you very much and have a great time.